The Battle of Dunkirk may have been one of the most decisive moments in World War II history. In a miraculous escape from nearly complete destruction, the British Expeditionary Force managed to flee the grasp of the German Panzers and live to see another day. Many view the evacuation and its aftermath as the turning point for the war as a whole, while others, at a minimum, cannot deny the simple fact that had the Germans continued their attack, the British would have not been so lucky by any stretch. Winston Churchill became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom on May 10, 1940. During a precarious time for the Brits, and as the Germans were on a mad dash to defeat the Allies as swiftly and fully as possible. At this point, many of Churchill's colleagues were already considering the possibility of accepting defeat and coming to a deal with the Germans. Many Brits believed that Germany and the UK were not natural enemies, and that making peace with the German Chancellor was not as bad as it may appear. Churchill, contrarily, was not ready to give up just yet. Still, the Germans had been ripping through both French and Belgian defenses, and the British were already facing defeats from the attacker. The situation was not looking hopeful for the Brits until May 21st, at which point the Expeditionary Force, known as the BEF, was able to surprise the German troops and execute a strong counterattack at the northern French city of Arras. The strike included both infantry and tanks, and apparently triggered psychological warfare in the mind of German General Rommel, who told his Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt that the Brits had attacked his 7th Panzer Division with hundreds of tanks. In actuality, the Allies had only used 74 tanks, and only 16 of those were of the newest and most capable to face off with the Panzer armor. At this point, multiple things happened. For one, Field Marshal von Rundstedt and the Chancellor himself had agreed that the terrain surrounding Dunkirk did not seem suitable for German armor, and they would be better off focusing on Arras. Additionally, Hermann Göring, a Luftwaffe commander, requested that he be given the lead on defeating the Allied troops at Dunkirk. Furthermore, the German Chancellor would later claim that at this time, he decided to give Prime Minister Churchill and his men a sporting chance. And lastly, Field Marshal von Rundstedt was warned by one of his generals that their tanks had been moving at such a rapid pace, annihilating the Allied forces throughout both Belgium and France, that their infantrymen were unable to keep up at the same speed and needed time to catch up. One or more of these reasons led to the Panzer troops being halted for 36 hours, ending on May 25th, while the Germans seemed confident that the BEF troops they had trapped at the port of Dunkirk and the remaining bottled-up French forces' fates were sealed and victory for Germany was imminent. Rundstedt misread the situation, though. And in reality, this pause actually gave the Allies time to orchestrate their recovery, both literally and symbolically. The BEF was able to set up new lines of defense and begin a solid plan for evacuation of the pinned-down troops. This suspension, which ended up lasting for 3 days as the Germans did not call for a re-engagement into battle until May 26th, also gave the British Royal Air Force time to prepare for such a crucial and risky evac, which was necessary given the fact that the RAF had previously taken notable hits and been weakened while attempting to assist the unprepared French. At this point as well, the French were ready to give up, as one general even stated that he believed in a very early capitulation. The escape of the Allies was a make-or-break moment, and the Germany's decision to halt their advancement gave the Brits the perfect opportunity to make it happen. On May 26th, when the battle recommenced, General Lord Gort, the commander-in-chief of the BEF, had already started to plan for an escape effort along the Lys Canal. The situation was complicated due to the new offensive from the Germans, and the British 2nd and 50th Divisions became pinned down. While the 1st, 5th, and 48th Divisions took heavy fire, the 2nd Division managed to keep an open corridor for the 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 42nd Divisions to escape alongside a third of the French First Army. The 2nd Division took heavy casualties but was successful nonetheless. The following day, the Germans became more aggressive, dropping bombs and showering the Allies with highly explosive artillery shell. While the battle raged on, the Luftwaffe began to drop leaflets on the Allies with maps of the current situation, reading in both French and English, "Look at the map. It gives your true situation. Your troops are entirely surrounded. Stop fighting. Put down your arms." On May 27th, the Germans still relentlessly aimed to prove their superiority, staging a full-scale attack to the south of Ypres using 3 divisions and aiming to infiltrate the British ranks and push them back. Luckily for the Allies, the 10th and 11th Brigades of the 4th Division were able to reach the 5th Division, who was taking the brunt of the beating, and they cleared the German troops enough for a counterattack to be launched. This counterattack was able to stall the Germans just enough for more of the BEF to retreat, although those attempts to head back towards Dunkirk were met with the Luftwaffe, a bombing that went on for 2 hours as the British troops tried to pass over a bridge on the Yser Canal, and roughly 80% of their vehicles were either destroyed or rendered unusable. Another bombing occurred the following night, leaving the Brits with almost none of their vehicles by the time they finished their trek. Meanwhile, on May 28th, the Belgian army under the command of King Leopold III stunned the British and surrendered, leaving a gap in the perimeter that the Allies had created along the Belgian coastline. General Gort was forced to send the already worn-down 3rd, 4th, and 50th Divisions to fill the hole between the rest of the Brits and the sea. All the while, General Rommel had encircled and cut off 5 French 1st Army divisions near Lille and engaged directly with those troops under the command of General Moligny. While this was a dangerous defense for the unrelenting French garrison, it was a vastly important act, as it preoccupied 7 German divisions for 4 days, keeping them away from Dunkirk. The battle between the Brits and the Germans continued, as the latter pushed the former farther and farther back. As June rolled around, the Allies were almost entirely evacuated as they made their way more and more into Dunkirk, followed closely by the Germans. The French held their ground, covering the British troops as they boarded the evacuation ships. Finally, on June 3rd, the French began to fall back until they themselves could evacuate with the last round of ships. So, what happened? And why did Germany allow their foes to escape their grasp? The answer to why the German Führer made the ultimate decision to halt the German troops for over 36 hours remains a mystery. Historians have been unable to decide whether it was an issue of poor strategy or if it was truly about wanting to give Churchill and the Allies a sporting chance. According to a letter from Franz Halder in July of 1957, the decision was mainly influenced by Göring, who had convinced him to give responsibility to the Luftwaffe instead of the infantrymen. Halder later wrote in his diary, expressing his anger surrounding the fact that the Luftwaffe had been grounded by poor weather and was unable to stop the Allies from evacuating as they had expected to do. On the other hand, Field Marshal von Rundstedt, after the war had ended, expressed his own thoughts on the matter. He believed that the Supreme Commander had undermined the military's abilities because he wished to help the British, due to the fact he had previously admitted to having notable respect for the British Empire as an entity. Adding to this theory, the Chancellor himself was the one to reference in his political testament on February 26, 1945, that Prime Minister Churchill was quite unable to appreciate this sporting spirit, pointing to the fact that he refrained from completely destroying the Allied forces at Dunkirk, implying that he was, in fact, going easy on the Brits. Still, at the time of the actual conflict, Directive Number 13 was issued by the Supreme Headquarters on May 24th and explicitly called for the complete annihilation of the Belgian, French, and English troops at and around Dunkirk. The Luftwaffe, in addition, was directly ordered to stop any escape attempts by the Allies across the Channel. No matter what the reason behind the halt order was, it is clear that the decision was appallingly detrimental for the Germans, and quite likely changed not only the course of the Battle of Dunkirk, but of World War II in its entirety.